You can make your old carbs go from this to this. Hey everyone, it's Refurb Day on my channel. Today we're going to take a whole bunch of parts that look like junk to other people, and we're going to clean them, refurbish them into a set of carburetors that will perform and look like new. So here I have a set of carburetors. One of the carburetors came from a set that is from an accelerator pump set. The other isn't. So what we're going to do later is going to drill out this non-accelerator pump and insert a spigot jet so that way we can use it as an accelerator pump set. Here I have all my excess parts laid out. There's a wide variety of used and dirty parts. We have parts that are rusted, corroded. There's going to be a lot of soda blasting done. Here we have all of our brass laid out. We have our adjuster screws, we have our throttle plates, and we have our jets. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our dirty parts, we're going to stick them in our ultrasonic cleaner. Anything that doesn't come clean, like certain rust spots, will be soda blasted in our blast cabinet. While those parts are cleaning, we're going to set up a spigot jet, just like on the carb we have here. We're going to take one of these holes, we're going to drill through it. We are going to get a used spigot, and we're going to push in a new one, followed by an accelerator pump fitting. In order to convert this carb to be an accelerator pump carb, you're going to need a couple parts that you can get from a carb lying around that has no use to you anymore. So you're going to need a fuel fitting that's going to take a 1/8 or a 7/64 inch fuel line. You're going to need a spigot jet as well. Both these parts you can get from a used carb, or you can try to order them online. And lastly, in order to drill into the carb, you're going to need a 7/64 inch bit. In order to extract these two items, you're going to have to put the accelerator pump fitting in a vise, and you're going to tighten that, and then you're going to twist and turn that loose. In order to get this spigot out, you can use a utility clamp like I have here. What you're going to do is you're going to put one end on the head of the spigot. The other end you're going to tighten. Make sure when you do this, you're tightening this straight on, and you're just going to slowly turn it until that spigot starts pushing through. Next, we're going to insert our spigot into our recess hole. Before we do that, we want to take a look at where the jet is. We want this little hole, which is called the jet, to be facing down the throat of the carb. All right, once we insert it, we're going to take a screwdriver and we're going to make another slight adjustment to make sure that jet is pointed directly downward. Last thing we have to do is we have to press in our fuel fitting. We're going to put a little bit of sealant on the neck of this fitting, and then we're going to use our vise to press it in. Looks good. Now it's time to soda blast these carbs. Not only are we going to remove the paint, we are also going to remove any rust or varnish. Now that our soda blasting is finished, we're going to put these in the ultrasonic cleaner. In the meantime, we're going to do some polishing. So in order to take these choke and throttle valves out, I use a specific technique. The technique I use is drilling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 1/8 drill bit and I'm going to drill the head of the screw, applying a slight gradual pressure. And I'm going to do this until the screw actually spins and breaks off. The reason why I do this is because these screws have been peened, which means the ends or the tails have been hammered flat, and what that does is it prevents the screw from backing out from vibration. Just going to take your pliers and you're going to unwind the screw until it comes out. So sometimes you may have to replace a broken brass fitting or change one out. This one in particular was so clogged that it wouldn't let 50 psi through. It was clogged by that green goo created by ethanol gasoline. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to put these rounded elbow fittings back on correctly, because this isn't a square press-in one. We're going to take a felt pad or something soft. We're going to put it between our vice jaws. Next, we're going to put some sealant on the male side of this fitting. We're just going to put a light bead and smear it in. This sealant happens to be Loctite 518, which is an anaerobic sealant, which means it's going to cure in the absence of oxygen. So it's a good one to use with the press-in fitting. Now we're going to take our fuel fitting, we're going to insert it between our felt pads and tighten down our vice jaws. Lastly, we're going to take our fuel pump body and we're going to press it in by hand, and we're going to go as far as we can go. We're going to double check, we're going to pull it out and verify. I'm going to match it up with a good fuel pump, and you can see I probably need to turn this fitting a couple degrees in that direction. When putting these choke and throttle shafts on, just make sure you follow these steps. First step is you're going to put the plastic collar on. You're then going to take one of the O-rings, going to grease it up, put it through, and we're going to put it through one end, grease the other O-ring, and insert it in. And you're going to take a screwdriver or a pick, and you're just going to press that O-ring in. Now we have to get our carbs ready to paint. What we're going to do is we're going to use a combination of painter's tape and old tubing, whether it is old fuel line or vinyl tubing that we have lying around, and we're going to cover up these fittings and holes with these tubings. Now the tape I'm using to cover the venturi is argon tape. You can get this on Amazon. Works pretty well with sealing the surface, and it doesn't come up like normal painter's tape. Now it's time to put the throttle and choke valves back in the carb. In order to do this, you have to peen the screws. Without peening the screws, you run the risk of that screw backing out and then getting sucked in the intake, and then eventually destroying your crank and your piston. So the tools you need are a hammer, a screwdriver, a punch. You're gonna need a strong thread locker. I use a green Loctite. If you don't have green Loctite, you can use red. And when I put these back in, I elect to use stainless steel screws, so that way they don't ever rust out. So if I have my carb and I have the threads pointing towards me, so we're gonna rotate it clockwise. We're gonna take our throttle valve and we're gonna have the numbers stay at the top. We're gonna insert it this way. Try not to over tighten it. You're gonna rotate this throttle valve, make sure it's smooth, and make sure that it closes completely. Sometimes people overlook throttle valves and they don't realize that the throttle valve is bent. If it's bent, it won't shut all the way, and that is causing their, whether it's a surging idle or a rough idle. Next, we're gonna take our screwdriver. We're going to insert it in our vise. We're gonna tighten that nice and snug. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the screwdriver, we're going to set the screw head over top of that screwdriver so that it sits in place. We need something that is butting against the screw when we go to pound the other side of the screw and peen it. If we didn't have this, the screw would obviously get pounded through the shaft and it would strip and break off. Once we have our carb sitting on top of that screwdriver with the screwdriver in firmly, we're going to take our punch, we're going to put it right on top of the screw. We're going to take our hammer and we're going to hit it at a medium strength a couple times. Only do a couple hits at a time so that this punch doesn't slide off and booger up your valve. Okay, we're going to verify that the screws are properly peened by turning the valve over and looking at the ends. The ends should be nice and flattened out, and those screws, even if they backed out for some reason, they won't fully back out and leave the shaft. Green Loctite peen screws, you can never be too cautious with your intake manifold. When you're doing the choke valve, it is the exact same process for peening the screws. Now, if the threads are facing you again, the shaft is going to be rotating clockwise. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our countersunk holes facing the left. If you have a throttle valve like this, you're gonna have this large hole on top and you're gonna have the number on the bottom. You're gonna insert it this way with the numbers facing the left. Again, gently insert it through the shaft and line up the holes. You're going to rotate it back and verify that those holes are lined up and the shaft is moving freely, which it is. A lot of times when refurbishing carburetors, I like to keep the brass unpainted and polished to keep these nice and clean and prevent these from corroding and seizing up inside the carb. You're going to put some grease all over the spring, and you're going to put a light amount of grease on the O-ring. You don't want to put too much in there. Now on this carb, the threads seem a little bit tight when screwing in the last low speed adjuster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chase this out with an M6 tap. This is on the low adjuster, that requires an M6. If it's the high speed adjuster, it will be an M5. And now for our accelerator pump. We're going to take our spring for the diaphragm, we're going to insert it in the groove here, we're going to leave it right there. Now instead of putting our diaphragm and plunger right on top, we're going to take our lever side, we're going to insert it through the opening, then going to take our screws, we're going to put them through the gasket. And the reason we do this is so that everything kind of stays in place. We're not pinching the gasket if it's not aligned. We're going to put it right on top. We next have to install our retention spring. We're going to unscrew the top and we're going to leave the screw on so that the lever can move slightly back. We're going to take our spring and our collar, put them together. Our collar goes on the smaller nub, and we're going to push it through and use our thumb to push it back. And now we can fasten down our screw again. Last thing we're going to do is check the action of the plunger of the diaphragm. We're going to take our lever, we're going to push down, and we're going to see how quickly this plunger returns to its normal position. This one is in perfect working order. If your plunger is taking a long time to return, that means you have some type of clog inside the channel of this accelerator pump. So right here, you're going to have a spring, and that spring acts as a pressure valve. And when that gets corroded, that can block airflow, and that's going to restrict the action of the diaphragm. So if that's the case, you're going to attach a fuel line to this fitting. You're then going to spray carb cleaner through it, and you're just going to keep spraying that until that plunger frees up and it's all cleaned out in that channel. Now it's time to put on our accelerator pump fuel line. We're going to measure and cut this out by hand. The fuel line I'm going to use is a 7/64 inch inner diameter fuel line from Ace Hardware. It is red in color. I've found that the OEM fuel line supplied by Mikuni hardens and cracks after a couple years of use. I will always change out that fuel line when I do rebuilds for customers. Now it's time to do the fuel line that feeds the accelerator pump bowl. Make sure that you have this restrictor jet in this line. If you don't have one, you can purchase it from a Mikuni dealer, or you can buy a 30 pilot jet for this fuel line size. When doing this, you can lubricate the inside of the tube, and you're going to push the cone-shaped side in first, and you can put it about halfway and make sure the cone shape is facing the accelerator pump. So here's our finished product in black. Also did a set in a blue metallic flake, just to show you that you can change the colors and personalize it any way you want. So there you have it. You don't have to go out and buy a brand new set of carbs for $450. You can do these simple things to your old set to make them look and perform brand new. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and share any videos that you find helpful. Don't forget to visit the rest of my channel where you can watch and learn more PWC and carburetor content. Thanks again for watching, and as always, God bless.